everyone, it is the Deafening Silence coming at you with another ASMR video doing a face reveal for the channel, right? And it's not really that much of a face reveal. If anyone follows my Face of Breath channel, you'll see my face on there quite a few times. And if I'm waiting for a milestone to do a face reveal on this channel, we'll be here a while. So, this is, if you couldn't tell by the title, maybe the merch and the figures and collectibles give it away. We're discussing Star Wars. Love the franchise, been a fan for over 20 years. The very first movie I ever remember seeing was The Empire Strikes Back, and I've been a mega fan. Been into the extended universe, the video games, the books, the comic books. Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy is one of my favorite reads ever. So, anyway, kind of variety of things we're going to get into here, and hopefully the green screen that I'm trying to experiment with here cooperates with me. If not, well, maybe you'll just see a green screen. Anyway, let's get into my favorite character, and maybe this will tell you. Now, I know this isn't Darth Maul's actual lightsaber, but those cost hundreds of dollars to acquire, money that I don't have, and they're also hard to find. But this is a double-bladed lightsaber, and I think it tells you who I like. I can remember when Episode 1 was starting to come out, and there was promotional advertisement out there and pre-movie merchandise and things like that. I was a massive drinker of Mountain Dew at that time, and I was a kid, and Darth Maul was on the cover of the cans, and I remember seeing the red tattoos and the horns or the hood or whatever, and I remember being really, really intrigued by the character. And then, of course, I finally see the movie, and, Ray Park is the man behind the character. Amazing stuntman, martial artist, and I believe he did a lot of the choreographing for the fight scene in Episode 1. Comes out and does the, and then you got the, and then, got the double-bladed lightsaber, right? And that just, immediately stuck with me. And, they've came up with a bunch of different lightsaber designs since then. You got the wacky stuff like the lightsaber nunchucks or the lightsaber whip. But for me, it's the double-bladed lightsaber. That is my favorite. Pretty much anytime I could play with a double-bladed lightsaber in the Old Republic games, or play with Darth Maul in Star Wars Battlefront 2, the old one, not the new one, I would play with it, that particular thing, because double-bladed lightsabers are where it's at for me. And Darth Maul, I just love the character. I love the backstory of the character. He's fueled by rage, but it's not just because of the dark side. It's because the Emperor has ruined him. He took him from his family and his tribe as a kid, from his parents. Tortured him for years. And the Zabraks, the race that he's from, they have the ceremonial, unique tattoo designs that they do, and the Emperor stripped him of this and carved into his flesh, I believe, the Sith tattoos that he now wears, and it's a constant reminder, it's a constant pain for him. And he hates the Emperor, right? He hates the evildoers as much as he hates Obi-Wan, who cut him in half. And I love that they brought him back for the Clone Wars. They made him canon again, so to speak. And Sam Witwer, who was, Star Killer in Force Unleashed 1 and 2, voices him, and he does a tremendous job. And then they brought back Darth Maul for the Rebels series, which I hated how he died. I wish it had been a longer, drawn-out fight. I understand that he had to die, but I just wish it had been a better fight with, cool animation and stuff. But him dying and seeing that Obi-Wan is protecting the one that's gonna bring down the Emperor gives him peace of mind, and he's able to accept that as he dies, and I think that's a nice touch. And in the extended universe, he defeats the Mandalore at that time to get the. Actually, that was in the animated series. He defeats the Mandalore to get that blade, that cool looking black blade that looks like a sword. And then in the comics, the Star Wars Son of Dathomir series that Dark Horse did before the comics went back to Marvel, because Disney's like, hey, we own both Star Wars and Marvel. We're bringing the comics back to Marvel. Try and stop us, right? But Dark Horse did the Son of Dathomir series where Darth Maul becomes basically like the leader of the crime world. Basically, the whole crime world of the galaxy, he becomes the leader of it, and that coexists with the Clone Wars series and the show. And so there's a ton of cool stuff with Darth Maul now outside of the first film, which I agree he should have been there for the whole trilogy, right? So, yeah, love Darth Maul, love the Zabraks, love playing as one in the Old Republic. Unfortunately, I don't have an action figure of him here. I hope to acquire one soon. But my second favorite character, yeah, we got Boba Fett here, a little dusty. Need to clean him off. Need to wash it off, actually. But yeah, Boba Fett. I love the Mandalorian helmet. I love the Mandalorians. They're, a fierce tribe. Not an actual race, but a fierce tribe of the strongest warriors across the galaxy that came together, right? I guess it's not so much a tribe, more just like a large group of people. But, and of course I've got several figures and things here of Boba Fett, including this really cool piece that I found at an antique mall somewhere. It's apparently pretty rare. I need to do some more research on it to find out. But yeah, Boba Fett with the jetpack and the cool weaponry that he uses, the flamethrower and the cool rifle and pistol and things like that. And the Mandalorians, they're feared and respected by Jedi and Sith alike because they're so good at what they do despite having no affinity to the Force, at least most of them. So, yeah, Boba Fett would probably be number 2 for me. At the very least, Darth Maul is like my favorite Force user, and Boba Fett's my favorite non-Force user. Though, of course, I have a strong affection for the classic characters like Luke and Yoda and Han and Leia and Chewbacca, the droids, so. But those are my favorite characters because I typically fall more towards the middle ground of things, so to speak. Like the Great Jedi, that's my favorite group of Force users. So, anyway, favorite characters, yeah. So, while we are at it and while we're here, let's get into favorite movies and least favorite movie. Now, I'm not going to go into too much details on the films in this video because, well, for one, we'd be here for hours. But for 2, I plan to make a separate Star Wars video looking at all the films, minus Rogue One, because I haven't seen it yet, from worst to best. And, but this is just kind of a little overview. And my favorite movie, it's tough to decide because I love both Episode 4 and 5 a lot. With Episode 4, you've got a completely self-contained story that you could watch over and over again and not technically miss anything. The reason why that is because George Lucas, in his amazing foresight, knew that even though he had a story that was supposed to encompass multiple films, there was a good chance that it wasn't going to be able to be told because the first movie was having such a horrible time getting traction. And at that time, it was just called Star Wars. He named it just Star Wars, not Episode 4, not A New Hope, but just Star Wars, because this was his one shot. And so you've got a story that he crafted that had a beginning, a middle, a climax, and an end. And it's, like I said, self-contained. You got droids escaping the Empire from a ship, crash landing on a planet, finding a farm boy named Luke, who just happens to know, either coincidence or through the Force, the man that the droids need to get this message from Princess Leia to. This farm boy Luke, also made by the Force, happens to be the son of a very powerful, Jedi, ex-Jedi, right? And he happens to see the only family that he knows die. And so he realizes the Empire's evil, and he goes with this hermit who can teach him the ways of the Force. Meets eventually a great group of friends and the rebellion who's trying to hold off the Empire. Luke happens to be a pilot And with that and his affinity to the Force, he managed to get the shot off that destroys the Death Star, defeats the Empire as we know it, and save the galaxy. And people may say, well, we don't know that Vader's Luke's father in that film by itself. That's true, but you don't need it in the context of the film. It's completely self-contained. With Episode 5, you've got so many signature moments. You've got the Battle of Hoth, which every Star Wars video game has that, right? You've got Yoda. You've got Luke going to train with Yoda. You've got the introduction of so many more characters to the story, like Lando and Boba Fett and the Emperor. You've got Han being frozen in carbonite. You've got Luke fighting Vader, lightsabers and everything. And then Vader telling him, I'm your father, right? And then the movie, it ends on a dark note, which is very uncharacteristic for family-friendly films at that time. You don't end on a dark, unhappy note, but that's what they did. Luke gets his hand chopped off. Han's frozen. He could be dead for all we know. The rebellion had their home base of Hoth destroyed. They're on the run. The Empire's got them by the neck. And, our heroes, they don't know if they're going to make it. This could be it, right? And so, it's a very innovative film by Lucas. Now, it's splitting the tiniest of hairs, but I'd have to give a slight tiebreaker to The Empire Strikes Back for my favorite. Simply, just the only thing I can think of is there are so many signature moments in that film. And let me also add John Williams' music. More great music in that, right? But the only thing I can think of is the signature moments in The Empire Strikes Back. I've been able to enjoy a lot of them outside of the movie, in books, graphic novels, Shadows of the Empire for the Nintendo 64, and it enriches the experience for me. And I know that's kind of not fair, because you could also make the same case that stuff exists for A New Hope, but I think I have to go with The Empire Strikes Back just for that reason, until I can come up with something else down the road. So, by contrast, my least favorite film of the group is Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I just feel like there was so much missing from that film. I was bored. And I should say, as a side note, I didn't like The Last Jedi. I did not. There was a lot of moments that I didn't like, a lot of decisions I didn't like, and it caused me to not care about a lot of the film. But Episode 2, I'm just bored with. I just want to get it over with and get to the next film, right? The last time I did a Star Wars marathon that actually happened, I had to stop about 2/3 of the way through the film. And when I came back to it, I was like, I don't want to finish this. I'm just going to go to Episode 3, which is a lot better than the other two, in my opinion. Episode 1 has redeeming qualities, but the romance just takes up so much stinking time in the movie, which Han and Leia's romance that is budding in Episode 5 doesn't detract from the overall story. It takes place in the middle of it, smack dab in the middle of it. So Episode 2, definitely my least favorite, and Episode 5, again, tiniest margin, most favorite Star Wars film. So anyway, I mentioned Shadows of the Empire for the Nintendo 64, and that's a good way for us to segue into talking about the video games. And as far as favorite video game from the series, it's really tough for me to say on that one as well. I enjoyed, Shadows and Rogue Squadron and the pod racing games for the 64, up through Rogue Squadron for the GameCube, up through Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, and then the Old Republic PC game, Empire War for the PC, Battlefront 1 and 2, the originals, not the EA stuff, and then Force Unleashed 1 and 2. I really enjoyed these games. For me, I'd have to give a slight tiebreaker to Battlefront 2, the one that came out in 04-05. I have sunk so many hours into that game, and even more so than the Republic series, which, those are RPG games with a 50-hour story, and multiple playthroughs with different classes, right? But I just enjoyed playing with the different eras and different classes of soldiers and everything. the Galactic Conquest, which is always entertaining, and then the story mode, which had a really tough mission with the Coruscant Temple. For some reason, that was just a problem for me. And my favorite class to use was the Jet Trooper from the clones. I loved being able to use the jetpack to get across the field. The EMP launcher is great for taking out any kind of droids, even the droidicas. And I got the cool commando pistol. My kill to death ratio isn't the best with that one. That probably goes to just the basic trooper with the super long blaster rifle. I loved using the clone sharpshooter as well, and the demolitions. And even though my least favorite class is like the engineers basically for each group, I actually liked the clone engineer because he had a shotgun, which was great for close quarter missions. And my least favorite is probably the rebels. They're ragtag, they're kind of basic, nothing really going for them, that's the point, they're rebels. They're trying to keep a rebellion going against a massive empire, right? But honorable mention goes to Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, specifically the second game, The Sith Lords. That is the only video game that I've ever stayed up through the entire night to the next morning to play, because even as a teenager, the fact that they really dived into the philosophy of the Force just really, really was intriguing to me. And they dived into it way deeper than I think even George Lucas would have ever thought about it. You got this exile who has had her, which is their actual written story for the game. It's a female, a disciple of Revan. She's had her link to the Force severed. And as she gets it back, she creates a wound in the Force because she wasn't meant to get it back, basically. She's too powerful. And it's a really, really intriguing story that they dive into. It's definitely something that the average casual Star Wars fan maybe would not find interesting or really care for, but I did. And then the Old Republic, I'm actually a founder for that game, which, if you don't know what that is, anyone who purchased and played the game or anything within the first 3 to 6 months or whatever, whenever someone sees you in the game, you have a title above your name in game. And you get to have the title of founder, which I would love to play that game on the channel with some ASMR gaming stuff if I can pull it off. And you would get to see that. You would get to see me with the title of founder running around the planets doing stuff. And I love to Force Unleashed, the first game, getting to really grip into the power of the Force, Really the only Star Wars game I can think of that I absolutely did not like was a old Starfighter game for the PC, and it was clunky. It was very bad graphic wise, and I tried, but I could not get into it, and that's a shame because and Shadows, I should say. What's funny about that game is, even though as a kid I could go through and beat the entire game, the sewer mission on that game, the main boss creature that's in there used to scare me so much as a kid that my mom had to go through and beat that boss for me. Even though I could beat the rest of the game fine, it was just that particular mission just was too much for me. So anyway, that's it for video games. So now that we've covered my favorite character, favorite game, favorite movies, least favorite, let's get into some did you knows and trivia and stuff for the franchise. This is stuff that I've picked up when I did research for papers in college, or watching videos on YouTube, or just doing research in general about the franchise because I really love it. I'm a big Star Wars fan. So first off, Star Wars, the original one, was a B-movie budget. George Lucas did not have a lot to work with. He was lucky that he even got a studio to pick it up. So they had to cut corners, they had to get very ingenuitive, they had to get very creative. And so, for one thing, the ships that you see, back in those days they didn't have CGI, and so the ships were really small model scale ships that they would just run in close-ups across a camera and such. In particular, you might remember, of course, the infamous scene at the beginning of episode 4 where the giant Star Destroyer is coming in. That's an example of that. In addition, the lightsaber. You've got the hilt, right? Well, Obi-Wan's lightsaber hilt in the first movie was a handle of an old picture taker that it's got a clasp that you hold on to, and then it's got a little light fixture at the top of it with a bulb in the middle that would flash whenever you take the picture. The lightsaber hilt was just them unscrewing the light fixture from the piece, and there you go. I actually saw one of these picture takers in an antique mall, and they were selling this thing for over $200, like close to $300, and I wanted it so bad, but I couldn't afford it. And I was sitting there thinking, yeah, they know what's up. They know that what this could be used for. So, unfortunate. They continued a lot of these practices into later films. For example, Episode 5, Boba Fett has his ship, the Slave One, that he's in when he's, pursuing the Millennium Falcon, trying to get his bounty, Han Solo. The ship is a light fixture from outside ILM Studios that they just pulled from the top to take back into the studio to shoot with. So, some other things are the area of Tunisia, which is the desert area that they filmed in for Episode 4, Mos Eisley. The homes there that they built for the set. Some of those homes are not only still there to this day, but some of the locals actually use them as real homes to live in. It's pretty fascinating that a franchise could have such an impact on a different part of the world just shooting a film. And also, they made a skeleton of a creature that George Lucas made called a crate dragon. It's out there in the desert sea, the Dune Sea, basically, when C-3PO and R2-D2 have crash landed and trying to, find this Obi-Wan Kenobi. They went back out to that area to shoot for either Episode 1 or 2. I can't remember which one it was. But when they went back out there, this is 20 years later, right? The dragon skeleton is still out there. You can see it to this day. Pretty interesting. And also, the last thing I can remember about that area is the particular home that Luke and his Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen live in at the beginning. That home, I believe, is available to rent and stay in for a night. Pretty intriguing. Probably not as busy as you would expect, but a part of me would like to think that there's a wait list for that as far as to get in and experience it. So, the infamous line Darth Vader says to Luke, no, I am your father. There was only 3 people that knew that line. George Lucas, obviously, who wrote it. James Earl Jones, of course, who had to voice the line. And then Mark Hamill. And I believe Mark Hamill only had to know because I think he had to re-act out a scene or something for it. He said something. And not even David Prowse, the actor who's inside the Darth Vader suit, knew. Originally, he says in that particular scene that they shot, after Luke says, he told me enough, he told me you killed him, David Prowse voices out the line, no, Obi-Wan killed your father. And Mark Hamill talks about this. He says, wow, that's a pretty great twist. And then George Lucas is telling him, no, actually Darth Vader's your father. And Mark Hamill had to keep that a secret, like it was near death threat serious that he had to keep it a secret back in those days even. And David Prowse, the actor for Darth Vader, was not too happy about this. And Mark Hamill actually tells the story that Harrison Ford sometime later leaned over to him at one point and said, you never told me that. So, David Prowse, actually, there is something unfortunate with him concerning Star Wars, and that is, back when he took the role, he signed a contract with Star Wars. It wasn't for a base salary. What it was is it was written in his contract that he was supposed to get a certain percentage of the profits that Star Wars made. Well, Lucas and Company, his lawyers, financial advisors, or whoever, they were able to manipulate the books in such a way that Star Wars appeared to make little to no money. And so to this day, if I remember correctly, David Prowse has not been paid for his role as the body for Darth Vader in any of those films, which is very unfortunate. I love the Star Wars universe and the movies, but that's bad. I gotta call that out. That's pretty bad. A few other things. Yoda's species has never actually been named in any publication. There are rumors and speculation out there that George Lucas actually has a name for the species, but he's never given it out, and he doesn't think it's important to give it out apparently. So, anytime a species of Yoda has appeared, they just simply call it Yoda's species, or just the name of the character, such as the Yoda species that was in the first Knights of the Old Republic game. I can't remember the name, but yeah, just Yoda species. Also, speaking of species, the Ewoks in Episode 6 on the moon of Endor, the natives, they are never called Ewoks in the film. That is a name that they came up with after the movie came out for advertisement and promotional stuff, right? Chewbacca. Chewbacca is actually an amalgamation of different animals. So yeah, while Chewbacca is mainly, the look for it was mainly inspired by George Lucas's own dog, the voice for Chewbacca and his mannerisms comes from a variety of animals such as walruses, lions, and bears, and badgers, and there's like a wide mix and range of voices. It's very similar to how George Lucas's overall design for Star Wars comes from an influence of different things. And then the last couple of things I can remember off the top of my head is Return of the Jedi Episode 6 was originally supposed to be titled Revenge of the Jedi, and it actually got so far into the process that promotional advertisement and things were released for it, but they changed it at the last minute to Return of the Jedi because they felt like, or at least Lucas did, that revenge just sounded too dark and mean for, the good guys, basically, for a Jedi. And so the Revenge of the Jedi stuff that is out there is a very rare collectible, so if you can find it, it's very expensive to get a hold of, and there's not much of it, right? And this is not the first time they did something like this. Luke Skywalker was originally supposed to be named Starkiller, but they changed that because it sounded too menacing, too evil, too mean for a good guy. And similar to how they used Revenge of the Sith as an inspiration taking from Revenge of the Jedi, Starkiller, Luke's original name, was used for Starkiller Base in Episode 7, taking things that were originally meant for good and using them for bad sources later on. So pretty interesting how that all works out. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much going to do it for all the main things I wanted to cover in this video. Just kind of an overview talking about Star Wars, some of my favorite things, some of my least favorite things. And I would love to do more Star Wars themed videos for this channel, so if you liked this, hit a thumbs up or a comment or a subscription if you like the content that I've put out so far. I would greatly appreciate it. It lets me know that you guys like what I'm doing and I need to continue it. I would love to do Star Wars gaming on the channel, ASMR style, if I can make that work. I've got comics that we could read through. I've got the entire miniseries of Son of Dathomir that we could run through. I've got other books that we could read through, like graphic novels and such, or like the books showing like the different vehicles and things like that. Mike could even do like an ASMR reading of some of the books, like from the Thrawn trilogy or whatever. Anything that sounds good, let me know, and I might look into it, because I love Star Wars. I love talking about it. It's been a series that's been with me for a very, very long time, and I've very much enjoyed it. It's gotten me through good times and bad. And so, yeah. And hopefully somewhere down the road I'll have a lot more collectibles that I can show off. Yeah, take the Funko Pops out of the box. Fight me. I need the space. So, and hopefully I'll have a Darth Maul figure to show off sometime in the future. So anyway, guys, take care. This is me signing off from a galaxy not so far away and not from a long, long time ago. Telling you, may the Force be with you. Take care, guys.